For simplicity's sake, I've taken hands. It was easier to find the hands in my poker tracker, but I also think that it's a situation people are going to run into often. I've taken hands where the hero has a hand like ace king, ace queen, ace jack. You've got a big ace. These are the kinds of hands where you'll often find yourself needing to make a decision. I mean, if you have a hand like aces pre-flop, you're going to be betting a lot of flops because there's never really a flop that you miss. There are some flops that aren't as good as others, but you never really miss. Whereas a lot of people aren't really sure what to do when they have a hand like ace king or ace queen and they miss the flop, or even when they hit the flop kind of weakly, they're not sure, am I supposed to bet or am I supposed to check? So hopefully it'll be somewhat helpful that we're looking at these kinds of big ace hands and how those are going to play after the flop. So here we've raised under the gun. We've gotten a call from the button. Not a lot to say about this player, but it is important to note that he's got a somewhat shorter than average stack. And that tells us a couple of things. It probably changes his pre-flop range a little bit. He should be calling with fewer speculative hands because his implied odds are not as good. He can probably still call with pocket pairs here because the effective stacks are more than 20 times the size of the bet that he's calling. So it wouldn't be unreasonable for him to call with a hand as weak as pocket deuces. It would be a mistake, which isn't to say that he wouldn't do it, but it would be a mistake for him to call this raise with a hand like 9-7 suited. That's a little bit too speculative, a little bit too hard to hit the flop. I'm raising under the gun, suggests my hand is a little bit stronger than if I had been raising from the cutoff, and the stacks just aren't quite as deep, and he's not going to make a big hand as often. So that should tell us a little bit something about his range. At the same time, he hasn't 3-bet us, which suggests he probably doesn't have, again, not impossible, but probably doesn't have big cards like ace king or pair of aces, pair of kings, bigger pairs. He's usually going to be 3-betting those hands. So that with that in mind about his range, let's have a look at the flop. This is, in my opinion, a sort of ideal flop to continuation bet. If this 9 were not a spade, if it were a heart, for instance, that would probably make it the perfect continuation betting flop, where it's very hard to hit this board. I mean, it's pretty unlikely he's calling me with any hand that has a 3 in it. He could have a 9. Even with a king, I mean, if he has king 10 against an under-the-gun raise, certainly there are plenty of people who will call that, but it's not a great call, and we have to discount it a little bit from his range. Even without knowing anything about him, we should know that in the poker universe, there are fewer players who are calling an under-the-gun raise with king 10